Hey everybody, it's about 7, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. Welcome to Rosina Ranch Paint Nights with Lisa. I hope you guys have all your supplies ready because we are going to dive pretty straight on right away. So let me just go over what you guys need for tonight's video. And also to tell you guys that there is a chat screen to your right. Do know that it takes me about 15 seconds to speak or answer any question that you guys have. There's about a 15-second delay here on the live channel. But one of the things that you guys are going to run into today is perhaps not catching up with me. So in that instance, I always ask if you guys are falling a little bit behind, just type in H in the chat and that tells me to hold. And of course, if I ask you a question, just go ahead and type in Y for yes. Or if you have any questions during tonight's video, go ahead and ask and then give me a little bit of chance to respond back to you. So, diving straight in. If you guys do have a supply kit, you guys are going to have a little kit like this. And this craft paper can actually be separated and torn apart. And you guys can lay that down for an extra layer of protection so you guys don't get paint all over everything, because you'll see my workstation, I have paint all over everything, including my laptop. So with that being said, inside you guys should have your wax paper, which is going to be used for putting your paint down, or if we need to mix some paint colors in, you guys are going to be using your wax paper sheet. Also, you guys are going to have a 11 by 14 canvas, and we're going to be painting this in the portrait, which means we're going to be painting it lengthwise up and down, not landscape, which would be side to side. Also included in your kit are going to be 6 different colors. So let's pull out our colors and explain them. This is our brown, or to be more specific, this is called burnt umber. So we're going to be using burnt umber tonight. We're also going to be using a primary red. We're going to be using a primary yellow. And white. Most of our white is going to be just as a layer. We're going to put white down before we put other colors down, just because some of the acrylic could be opaque. So we really want that color to pop. Of course, we've got our black. And last but not least, you guys might be wondering what color this is. This is Platho blue mixed in with primary blue. So you see that darker blue that's mixed in there? That's Platho blue. But there's a mixture of Platho blue and primary blue. So we got that. And the 2 brushes we're going to be using tonight are our 1-inch chisel brush, which is this little guy. Go ahead and just kind of make sure you get any loose hairs out of the way, because they will get stuck into your acrylic paint and it'll be a little bit difficult to get them out, but just kind of give that a good shake. And then this is our small chisel brush. This is always good to have for any of your paintings. Make sure you wash your brushes out at the very end so you guys can save those later. Alright, and if you guys haven't done so, go ahead and get your water cup filled up. You're going to need to change that out probably a few times throughout this painting. And make sure you guys have napkins, and maybe some additional napkins if you're really heavy on washing your brushes. Alright, let me go ahead and show you guys my studio desktop. There we go. Let me try and get all these colors in. Okay, try to get my colors in so you guys could see those. Alright, if you guys have any questions, remember just to go ahead and ask them on the chat on the right hand side, and I'll be able to answer those. Another thing too is to go ahead and grab a blow dryer, because we are going to be drawing layers in between, and we are going to need that blow dryer to help us speed up that process, because that will slow us down tremendously. And if you find that you guys can't keep up with the painting, you can always pause, come back later, watch another day. It's completely up to you. Your paints should be fine once the lid's on for up to 2 weeks, so you guys can finish it at any time. Alright, so we're going to dive right in. First thing we're going to do is we're going to use our 1-inch chip brush. And it's also called, or it falls under the wash brush, because what we are going to do with this is we're going to wash paint onto our palette. Now our canvas is 11 by 14. We are going to be painting this portrait style, which means straight up and down. And without dipping it into the water, because I want to make sure I really saturate this brush, I'm just going to go in and completely mix those two blue colors together and just really saturate my chip brush in that pretty blue. Now what you want to do is you want to start off on one corner, and we're just going to kind of make a rainbow effect, and we're just going to wash back and forth until we don't see any canvas. We don't want to see any of that white on our canvas anymore. Just kind of do a rainbow effect. The reason why we're doing a rainbow effect is because we are going to see some streaking, and we like that streaking. It makes for a beautiful sunset or backdrop, but we want to see those lines. Just make sure you're going back and forth in a rainbow motion. And we're actually going to end up covering this entire canvas in this pretty blue. And remember guys, if you need me to slow down, just go ahead and hit H in the chat feature and I will stop and give you some time. But we are going to continue on. Just completely cover this canvas in that Platho primary mixture. So right now I'm just covering the canvas top. We are using acrylics. Acrylics do tend to dry very quickly. When you're blending, like we're going to be doing some blending right now, you do want to work fairly quickly because you want your paint to still be wet when we're going to be doing any blending of colors. And if you guys can't hear me, or for some reason the stream goes blank, please use that chat feature to let me know. There has been one time when that went down for a few minutes and that kind of threw things off, so let me know. But let's go ahead and completely cover this canvas. Now you don't have to focus too much on the bottom part. If you want and you feel like you don't have too much paint, you could go ahead and actually leave this white, because we are going to be covering it in black. So I can actually stop right there and just keep working in that rainbow motion, because we want those streaks in there. And we're going to go actually all the way to the top on this. Just keep working it. Now if you ever heard somebody use the term canvas wrap or gallery wrap, what they're referring to is that that picture is going all the way off the canvas and onto the sides. And I do encourage that. It makes it look that much nicer. So what you need to do if you would like to do a canvas or gallery wrap is make sure that you are getting those sides and covering those in your paint as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my sides right now. Make sure I continue with that side brush. I want to make sure I get that right now so I don't forget. And not to forget the other side. And when I get to the top, I'll do that top as well. Okay. I'm completely going all the way to the top because I want to next use black, and I want that black to really blend in well. And don't forget to do those rainbow strokes. Up and down, side to side. Okay, now that I have that, don't want to forget my top. Try and show you guys without getting my hands super dirty. Just go ahead, put that top color in, making sure there's no white left. Alright, now like I said, we are working with acrylics, so we do have to move a little fast, especially when we're talking about blending. But what I want you to do is, without washing that chip brush, keep that blue paint on there, and we're going to move into the black paint. And just very lightly dip your chip brush in black paint. I say just the tips. Don't want too much black on your paintbrush. So I'll show you guys how much I put in there. Probably about a ½ inch I dipped in black. Okay, and I'm going to come all the way up to the top. And I really just want to do one streak across right now. I don't want too much black in here because I don't want to darken it. If you ever heard vignette, we're just going to create almost a vignette. So we're going to kind of do that rainbow brush just at the top. Kind of go back and forth. And as I still have those paints mixed on my brush, I'm going to slowly work my way down just until I start blending more into the sky. And you want those streaks. You don't want to overthink those streaks because you want those streaks in there. Kind of blending it back up and back down. You just want that black to nicely blend into your blue sky. But you don't want to do too much black because you are going to be putting a big forest underneath or down at the bottom. So you don't want it going down too much. But again, since you added in your black, make sure you do your sides of your canvas as well. So make sure you're bringing that black out to the sides of your canvas. The other side, and of course you cannot forget your top. Don't forget the top of your canvas. I'm going to take a step back and look at it, see if I'm happy with the shape. So come drag that a little bit more. Okay. Now what we can do at this point is go ahead and wash out our brush because we don't want any of that blue still in there. So be aggressive, really, really wash out your chip brush. Okay. We're probably going to have to do a water change after this one. And then make sure you dry that chip brush. Okay. Now we're going to move on to our chisel brush. And what I want to do right now, if you could see what I'm doing with my fingers, I'm kind of flicking it. You see me flicking those fibers on there? I want to, before I put another layer on, I want to create a sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dip the tips of this chisel brush into my white. And I'm going to get a little dirty here, guys, because everything else here is covered in paint. Why not? But we're going to just take our finger and we're going to put a little bit of white on there, and I'm going to flick some white paint on just to create a little starry background before we start layering. So if you guys want to, just go ahead and dip the tips of your chisel brush in your white paint. Okay, I just did a really, really tiny amount right now. Some people, if they like bigger stars, they like to just almost flick it like this, tap it. But I do like those little smaller stars, so I'm just going to lightly flick. And I didn't have enough paint on there, so I am going to put more paint. Okay, and just flick. Just get it everywhere. There's no rhyme or reason, no wrong or right. And if I want some of those bigger stars, I can always come back and just tap on some more. Just adding some beautiful stars in our beautiful camp backdrop, which is making me very jealous because I really want to go camping right now. Camping and doing some hamburgers and s'mores. Right? Alright. So I'm pretty happy I got some stars on there. It's not crazy, it's not overpowering, but what I do want to do now is wash out that chisel brush really well. And dry that off. If you guys have a blow dryer, this would be a great time to pull that out. I got my trusty blow dryer, and the key with blow drying is always keep it on the coolest setting. So you guys want to turn that heat to low. You do not want a high heat because if your paint is thick in some areas, it will crack it. So go ahead and just remember, keep it on low heat. And we're going to work this paint. Right now it's a little glossy. You can see some shine on my canvas. I'm going to go until it's completely matte flat. There's no more shine left, and I know it's completely dry to the touch, so there'll be about a minute or 2 minutes. So you guys aren't staring at my painting the entire time. I'm just switching it up. Hi guys. Hope you're able to keep along. I should have some music playing. I'm on a bouncing ball if you're wondering why I keep moving like this. I say about 2 minutes, we're going to see that shine go away. Gloss. You can see it's already starting to get flat. We're almost there. Because of the weather, it's just drying really quick. I think mine is ready to go. I put down where the white stars are, and I'm not picking up. I did pick up a little bit of white, but for the majority, I think I am dry. Alright, so I'm going to move on to our forest feature. Now, a lot of people get nervous when they see shadows or forest, but I can't tell you how easy this is to do. And again, your painting won't look exactly like mine. My painting won't look exactly like yours. We all paint differently, and really it's just a process of the more you practice, the better you get. And a lot of us don't have time to paint, but every time we do, we're going to learn a little bit more, and we're going to get better each time. But this is so simple. I really do enjoy doing this, and I suggest, take an hour every week at least just to do some paintings. But let's go ahead and let's get the bottom part of our canvas covered. We're going to take our chisel brush and just load it up with a bunch of black paint. Okay, I loaded it up, and I'm just going to plop it down, and because this is such a small brush, it's going to take me a little bit. So really get a lot of paint on there, because your canvas is thirsty, and it's going to soak up a lot of this paint. Really, we're just laying down paint. We're not really thinking too much about it right now. But I want to cover up all that white that I'm seeing down here. I just want to cover it all up. Just Just wherever you see white, cover it up with some black. Alright. Make sure you're just getting all the canvas covered. Again, this is a smaller brush, so it's going to take a little bit more work. It's not a washing brush. We'll come down here. Make sure you're getting it all. And again, since I'm doing a canvas or gallery wrap, I'm going to make sure that this paint goes beyond the canvas and onto the sides. Also, I notice there's some paint pooling that's really thick on the canvas. I want to kind of thin that out. It's going to take a really long time to dry it if my paint is too thick. So I want to thin that out. Get some more paint. But I do want to get those sides. So again, lift up your canvas. Make sure you're bringing over your paint onto your sides. Okay, make sure we get that side. And make sure you get the bottom. Now when you dry your black paint, you really have to thoroughly dry it. The worst thing that we could do right now is to go ahead and start painting with a semi-wet canvas, because that black will just make those colors so mucky and yucky, and oof, we just do not want that. We have to really make sure that our canvas is completely dry with this black. But we're going to give ourselves some extra drying time because we're going to get to work on some of those trees. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and lay that down. Alright, now the trick with the trees, if you guys notice in our reference photo, which is on our lower right hand side, I did want to kind of give the appearance that it's off in the distance. So what I did was I started off with a few trees that are a lot shorter in the middle, and as we go out to the sides, our trees are growing and they're getting taller and taller, and you are going to want maybe some trees going off your canvas. So in order to get started on our trees, load up your chisel brush, or actually if you still have paint, you could use the paint that's already on there. And I'm just going to commit, and I'm going to go find my middle, and I'm just going to go a little bit to the left of my middle, and I'm going to put my paintbrush down and just do one stroke all the way down to my bottom. And I'm going to come find the middle, and just to the right of it, I'm not going to make them the same height, I'm just going to come a little bit higher. You can do the same, you can do it different, you could do it shorter, but I'm just going to commit and go all the way down to the bottom. I need some more paint. So what I'm going to do again, so I'm going to find my center, I'm going to go a little bit over. Let's see, I'm going to do 3 trees on my left, 3 trees on my right. So I'm going to come a little bit further over, and I'm going to make this one nice and tall. I'm going to commit, put my brush down, and just using that edge, drag it all the way down to my base. And again, I'm going to make this one even taller, because this one should be a little bit closer to me, and it's going to really go off my canvas. I'm just going to draw a line all the way down. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing to the right hand side. So I'm going to add 3 trees on my right hand side. The first tree, I'm going to make them get taller as they get closer to me. I'm just going to commit and using my edge, going all the way down. And this I'm going to do really nice and tall. And I'm just going to commit and make my line all the way down. Going to go over that line just so it's nice and dark and solid. Alright. And you could add in more trees, you can make them shorter, taller, it's all up to you because it is your painting. Alright. So we're going to go ahead and just get started on the shadows of these trees. And really, the trick to these trees is I like to just start off at the very top. And what I like to do is just to paint, I call it a skinny triangle. And by skinny, or actually, you know what would be a better way of describing it, is a fidget spinner. So skinny triangle in my mind is just like this. A skinny triangle, or a fidget spinner. So we're going to start off with that shape at the top of all of our trees. I'm going to start right here. I'm just going to kind of do what I say, a little mini fidget spinner. I'm going to do that to all the tops of my trees. I'm just going to work my way down. Almost looks like a spade too. And remember, it's probably going to go off your canvas, which is perfectly fine. Alright. Remember, if you guys have any questions, just go ahead, if you have a moment, to type them and ask me. Right now, I'm going to just take that edge of my chisel brush and slowly just start making these bunches of leaves in layers. So I'm just going to lay it down and just kind of wiggle back and forth a little bit. And I don't even have to do straight lines, just maybe partial line, wiggling some here. You don't just want to go straight across, and you don't want to just go partial. So what I want you to do is I just want you to wiggle. Just wiggle, because the more you wiggle, the more leaves you're giving your tree. But just as a rule of thumb, as you're going down, you're always going to get larger leaves, larger branches of leaves. So I kind of like to just start and then come back. There's really not too many gaps inside these trees, so you just kind of play with it and get your shape. And even if you're going into this tree, don't worry, these trees are going to overlap. But once you start to get your shape, you just kind of start going back in and filling in. Just make sure you're wiggling, because it's off in the distance, and the further things are, the less in focus they are. So we kind of want that fuzziness, that fuzzy appearance, I should say. Alright, now this is actually going to take probably the longest part of the painting, so just be patient with this. We're just going to keep coming down. I'm going to keep adding more and more leaves as we go. You don't need a lot of paint on your paintbrush either, because again, once we start to dry it, it's going to be that much longer to dry. But I do need more paint now. Okay, just going to wiggle. I'm going to overlap some of this. And remember, there's not so many gaps in the middle of the tree. As we get closer to the middle, it does tend to get a little bit fuller. So I can go in and just kind of start blotting extra little leaves in there to make it look fuller. Make sure you're wiggling. I don't want you guys to get bored. This is supposed to be nice and relaxing, because being cooped up all day, you know, when I go out shopping, grocery shopping, that is the highlight of my week. So painting is a very nice stress reliever. I hope you guys feel the same. It's just relaxing. And, you know, this makes me want to do some camping, which, if you guys have been to Big Bear, it is absolutely beautiful, especially during this time with all of our crazy heat wave. Say a good 30 degrees cooler. It's gorgeous up there. Alright, I'm going to load up some more paint. And like I said, this is going to probably take the longest part of your entire painting, so just go ahead and get to it. Don't be scared. I'm just getting the general shape going. Right now my tree is super skinny. Maybe it was in a fire, I don't know. But I'm going to make her beautiful later. I just want to get my general shape down. As I go down to the bottom of the base, I want to get really wide. Wiggle that brush. Don't overthink it. If you're overthinking it, you're not having fun. So again, just wiggle. And I can always go in and fill it in later. I'm going to give it some more leaves now. There we go. Just filling it in. Now I'm going to just blot down some extra leaves. Extra coverage, especially towards the middle. Because as we get closer to the middle, there's more leaves on that branch. And we're just making a silhouette of these beautiful trees. Make sure your paint's not too thick or it will take forever to dry, especially since we're going to be layering this. But let's move. I'm going to move on to another tree, and again, just kind of get my general shape going. I am going to start getting into that other tree. Just wiggle. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. I know you can do that. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Whew. The only thing about this is I do love campfires, but it is too hot to have a fire right now. At least I think so. Got a fire pit in the backyard, but I do not want that bad boy running right now. Alright. Got some more paint on my brush, and I really want to focus on the center of that tree, adding some extra leaves because it's not that skinny. I want myself to have a nice full tree. Okay. Not too hard, right? It's pretty easy stuff. Okay, I'm just going to start on this one, make my initial lines. Just wiggling. Getting a little wider. Sorry if you guys don't like me. I constantly am talking because I don't want there to be just complete silence while we're all doing this. You can put me on mute if you want. I don't mind. Alright, we got the general shape of it. Add some more paint. Go in and fill it in a little bit more, especially the middle. Add some leaves. Kind of plop some leaves in there, especially towards the center. I'm pretty happy with that one. Got a few of those stars popping through, which I like. Okay. I'll come over here. Start my leaves. And I have to remember I'm having this continue off the side of my canvas, so I need to make sure I have branches going off my canvas as well. And this is, I think, a fairly easy painting if you're not too familiar with painting. The main focus of this is just to kind of give you ideas about trees and silhouettes. And we're going to focus a little bit on highlights and talk mainly about layering with acrylics. I'm going to start blotting that in. And giving more leaves. Because the thing with these acrylics is you see this beautiful vibrant color, and when you put it on a dark background, you don't even really see it. So what we have to do is we have to layer on white prior to laying down our additional acrylic, otherwise we're not going to see anything. And again, like I told you, I'm going to do some quick little branches coming off the sides, just so it can continue on. Okay. And I'm going to focus on my last tree on the right. And maybe you're a lot quicker than me and you guys are just sitting there waiting for your canvas to dry, which would be awesome. But just let me know if you need extra time. Just put H on the chat. Just wiggling my way off. And I'll make this guy really, really big, so he's just going to go completely across. There's too much paint right there. A big blob of paint. Alright. Just getting down in here. It doesn't have to be too pretty and too perfect. Alright. I'm going to start filling it in a little bit more. Especially towards the center. Kind of a plopping in color. Almost there, I promise you guys. I know you feel like you've probably been doing this forever. Just really want that tree filled in. Plopping extra color. And not forgetting on the sides of my canvas. I'm just going to flick paint in there on my sides. Just because it's going completely off my canvas. Okay. Alright. So I got all of my forestry down. What I want to do now is make sure my chisel brush gets nice and clean. Okay, dry that off. And while I'm letting my canvas dry a little bit more, right now would be an excellent time to go change out your yucky water, because now we're going to be working with a lot of light colors. So I suggest right now taking a break for a minute and just going and grabbing some fresh, clean water. Alright, I got my water. Okay. Now there's some thick parts. I got a lot of black paint in certain areas. It's still really bright and shiny. So I am going to need to pull out my blow dryer and make sure all of this is completely dry to the touch. Make sure, again, your blow dryer is set on low heat. You don't want it cracking. Give it about 1 to 2 minutes to make sure this is completely dry. All that shine is gone. Nice and flat paint. Now you really want to make sure that the canvas is completely dry, because like I said, when you're working with that dark background, if it's just the slightest bit wet, it's going to start mixing in with that white and your colors aren't going to be as nice and vibrant. Okay, let's see. Okay, I feel that's really dry. I've got some nice clean water over here. Now what I want to do is I want to get started on my campfire. Actually, before we get going on our campfire, make sure your chisel brush is really clean, and we're going to do some highlights on our trees back here. So what I'm going to do right now is dip this chisel brush just the very tips in some yellow. And I'm almost just barely going to touch my black. If you want, you can grab one of your paint tops and just kind of test out that color. And I want a very muted yellow. So right now it's a little too dark. It's more like a gray yellow. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow to that. Like I said, I just want a slightly muted yellow. I don't want it to be so bright because the campfire is not going to give off a ton of light against these trees that are far off in the distance. But it is going to get sunlight. So I'm liking this color here. It's kind of a yucky, mucky yellow, but that's kind of what I'm going for. So using the edge, and I'm talking very, very lightly, almost no pressure at all, I'm just going to lightly tap down back and forth on some of my tree branches. And the thing to focus on is there's going to be more light hitting the trees in the middle than there are on the sides. So I tend to put a lot more color on my center trees. Just picking up that light. Maybe light little strokes. And this paint, a little is going to go a long way. Again, I'm just picking up some highlights on these trees. And as we go off in the distance, not so much light is hitting these trees. Maybe just a little bit, and then when we get to this outer tree, just a little bit of light is hitting it. Okay, let's come over here, maybe rub these in a little bit. More light on the center ones. As we come out, all this was just one little dip in that color. I really don't need to dip it again. I'm just looking for a little bit of highlight. As I get off to the side, I'm just putting very, very few highlights. Come back in here, adding some more highlights. Yep, just wherever you feel like it. Again, don't overthink it, then you won't be having fun. And with this, I'm going to go ahead and make sure my chisel brush is nice and washed. We are going to be working on the white now, so make sure your brush is really, really dry. You don't want to water down white. Okay, let's go ahead and dip our chisel brush in our white. And I want to focus first on the shape of the flames in the fire. So I'm going to start off small and build from there. Then I'm going to add my fire. I'm going to start just a little bit below this line and just kind of create almost like a teardrop. A really long teardrop. And I'm going to build from that. I'm going to build from this shape I'm creating right now. And I want to fill it in. And be mindful of your strokes, because even though we're layering on top, sometimes the acrylic paints that we're using can be very opaque and not have too much pigment in them, which means your streaks underneath are going to show through. So I kind of focus on making sure when I'm filling it in, my lines are still going from the bottom to the top, because I know that those lines can sometimes show. Okay. Now from this little teardrop shape, let's go ahead and just build off of it. I'm going to maybe just focus like in teardrops. So I'm going to start another little teardrop here. Come back up. And maybe another little teardrop here. Flames are not perfect. They have their own personality. They do what they want. Okay. And maybe a little teardrop here. And the reason why we're laying this white down, you'll see, is because that those flames and that fire is just not going to show at all unless we start layering down a white first. Let's get a little bit more paint. I'm going to have this, maybe top of this teardrop curve a little bit. I want it to curve. And then what we can do here, while we still have paint on our chisel brush, is those little embers that like to fly up. Be generous and kind of plop your brush down and wiggle it. Plop your brush down and wiggle it, and just give yourself some big embers as it gets closer to the flames. Just sporadically, wherever you feel like there might be a big little ember just pushing off into the air. And then as we get closer up to the top, I want these embers to go all the way from the flames all the way to the top, but we do need to lay down that white. So just use the very edge and just kind of wiggle in a few embers going up into the air. Sometimes they might just look like stars, and if you want to make them stars later on, that's perfectly fine. But just add in some embers flying off. And remember, they're going to go everywhere, so don't be perfect with it. There's going to be little embers everywhere. Even down here, even maybe off to the side. There might be a little ember that you want to do. Just to make it look more natural, we're going to add more embers. We're going to go over these with color, but for now, we're just layering down our white so that we can have that yellow pop through later. Alright. Now I want these logs underneath the flames to really show through that burnt umber orange. So let's go ahead and get some more white paint. And just laying it completely flat down, the width of this brush, I'm just going to push a log into the white. I'm going to push a log in. Just lay your brush completely flat down and drag it in. And you can make it thicker. But if we don't put that white down before we put that brown, we're just not going to see any of that wood. So just push your brush down. Okay. Giving myself some logs. And again, make sure those lines just continue upwards, just in case they show through the paint. Alright. Now before we move on, this has to be completely dry, otherwise our colors aren't going to be as vibrant. So let's go ahead and once again, let's pull out that blow dryer, but make sure your brush is nice and clean. Go ahead and clean that off with the water. And pull out our trusty blow dryer. Alright, remember low setting, I'm going to say about a minute to dry. So let's get started. Drying our campfire. Not dry yet. Alright, I think we're dry here. Let me go ahead and touch it, make sure. Alright, I'm not picking up any paint, but I really need to make sure this is dry before we move on. Okay. Make sure your chisel brush is nice and dry. And I'm going to go ahead and pick up some burnt umber brown. Right now, I'm going to go over those white logs that we painted in. I'm not going to go all the way in because a lot of this is going to get covered with flames. But I really want to make sure that I'm going just tracing slightly over that white because I don't want to see any white from here. So nice streaks, because again, your acrylic's a little bit see-through, so you want to make sure you do have those nice long streaks coming in. I'm just making sure I cover all that white. I can go a little bit outside of the lines as long as I'm covering up that white. Again, going a little outside the lines, making sure I'm covering up that white. And you can use the width of your brush just to kind of create the size that you need by pushing it all the way down. Okay, pick up some more paint. I'm going a little bit outside of my lines, making sure I'm really picking up all that white. Alright. And as you can see, some of these logs are going to go into the flames, so what I'm going to do here is get a little bit more burnt umber. I'm going to have a few logs coming all the way into the flames, just partially. So like maybe I'll choose this log to come in a little bit, maybe this log will come in. Make sure you're using nice long streaks. It kind of looks like wood grain when you do it that way. And just go over any areas that need extra paint, because this paint does dry pretty quick. See, I think that white wasn't, yep, that white wasn't quite dry. So let's try and cover that real quick. Alright, I'm pretty happy with those logs. Simple. We'll highlight them later. But let's go ahead and clean off that chisel brush. And dry it well. And we're going to dip our chisel brush into our bright primary yellow. Okay. Go ahead and load up that chisel brush with the yellow. And I'm going to start at the top of my flames. And I'm just going to start tracing everything that was white. And again, you kind of want to go a little bit over your white lines, just so that white's not showing through. Go ahead, and as you can see, your yellow is very vibrant, but it does show those streaks underneath, just like I said it would. Even though it's a very vibrant color, it's opaque, which it is a little bit see-through. That's why I want you to focus on your white streaks when you make them. Just kind of continue with those streaks going up and down and tracing out that white. Okay. So I'm going to keep coming back in, just going over. You don't have to be too delicate, too careful. Just getting in there, making sure I'm covering all that white. I might get into that brown a little bit. Just makes it look like a natural flame just going right over that log. So don't be afraid to go over that brown. Just slightly. Okay. Alright. Now that I got that, I'm going to focus on just kind of wiggling, laying down some paint and wiggling over any white little ember that we made. just so it's no longer white. Now we got a little yellow ember. Okay. And again, you want to kind of go outside the lines just so slightly. It'll look more natural that way. And over here I could pick and choose which one I want to be stars and which are embers. Getting all the way up to my painting, top of my painting. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit more paint. And just with the tip, I might add just a few more embers. And when these dry, these will be much less visible, I should say, than the ones that have the white behind them. They're going to just disappear, kind of. Just giving myself a few embers with no white paint behind it, because those will just kind of disappear once they dry. Alright, now while my chisel brush is still wet, I'm just going to go ahead and very lightly dip the tip of this just in red, very so slightly, just to get that orange flame going. Let me just rub it onto my wax paper. I want to get a nice little orange going. Okay, got a little nice orange. I'm going to start at the top of my flame and just kind of naturally streak down. Again, start at the top and just naturally streak down into your flame. Wherever you feel like it needs some color, you don't have to go too crazy, but I tend to add a lot more red down towards the bottom. I think flames, as they go higher, they get more yellow. You might even get some blues down here, but it gets bright blue and then it turns white and then it gets red and then yellow at the tops. So I'm just going to add a little bit of orange color. You really don't have to use that much red. But as you can see, I'm going to take some of that orange now, and I just want to kind of maybe highlight a little bit of that wood and just layer on some orange, kind of like that wood might be turning ember red. That wood's getting really, really fire red hot, and so it's lighting up. I might even add some more red in there. Mix that in. Okay, got a little bit of red going on with that orange. Just making some of these parts really, really hot. This fire is hot. Okay. Alright. I'm going to go ahead and wash that chisel brush off. Make sure it's nice and dry. You don't want it wet, you don't want to water down our colors. It's getting a lot of use, so I'm going to pinch it, make sure all those fibers are really close together. I still have some paint on there. Okay. Right, now I'm going to load this up with, actually before I go ahead and do that, I do want to make sure this is dry because I want that white to really pop in the fire. So let's go ahead and dry this really quick with our blow dryer. Let's give it about 1 minute to dry on low heat setting. thing I noticed is that burnt umber brown color is taking a little bit longer than the other colors to dry. So just be aware of that. It's still a little bit tacky, I can see, but it's dry enough to where I can paint over it. So I'm going to go ahead and take my chisel brush and dip that in white. And as you notice, some flames in the fires are super, super bright white, so I kind of want that pop of white to show. So I'm going to start somewhere in the middle, and I'm just going to kind of flick up into my flame randomly. It's kind of where I feel like putting some white highlights. Don't overthink it. Just a little bit. Maybe a little white up here. Like I said, just a little bit. Don't go too crazy. Sometimes we overdo stuff and we have to take a step back and you have to look at the picture and then you go, yeah, I don't want to add any more to it. So while I still have the white paint on here, I'm going to go ahead and dip it into the yellow again. Let me dip that into the yellow. Okay, so I still have the white on here and I just dipped it into the yellow. And take it on your wax mixing sheet and just kind of get a muted yellow going because we're going to do some highlights. And with that yellow muted down with the white, I'm just going to take that very edge and just highlight some of those logs by starting at the top and dragging that down. Just like the light is just hitting it and the light is bouncing off of some of these logs. Okay. Alright. Now with that being said, we're going to add a few little boulders or rocks around our campfire. And really all I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump right in and I'm kind of going to do a rainbow effect. Maybe a really kind of crooked rainbow. So I'm going to kind of start like a rainbow and just come down. And then connecting it again, I'm just going to do a little funky rainbow and wiggle, wiggle, and come down. And this is just the light reflecting off of those rocks surrounding our campfire. Just kind of make a rainbow shape rock. There we go, just the outline. And kind of just add in a few jagged lines on that rainbow. That's all there is to it. Just a few rainbow shapes. You can actually maybe extend them down a little bit more or overlap them. Just because the light's hitting those tops of those rocks and we want to brighten those up. And at this point you might want to take a step back. One thing I think I really would like to do just to make this look a little bit more realistic is add some shadows underneath some of these logs. So I'm going to go ahead and wash my chisel brush out. Make sure it's dry. I'm going to dip it in my black. And just using that edge, I kind of want to just do the same thing with the highlights, but I just want to maybe darken that up. And before I did that, I should have, don't mind this. I'm going to dip it into the umber brown and give myself a little bit darker of a brown than what I was working with. But I still want that dark brown. I want to still see brown in there. I just want it to be dark brown. And now I'm going to use that as a shadow, just to break up some of these logs. Just a little bit of shadowing in there. And really, that's all there is to it. What I would say is, you know, if you don't like how bright the highlights are coming off the boulders, you could go ahead and kind of wash your chisel brush. And with it being semi-wet, you can kind of wash away a little bit of that. It is going to dry a little bit lighter. Just kind of washing away some of that paint. But I like it. And you can pick which side you would like to go ahead and just sign your signature. You can either use this chisel brush, or sometimes I like to just use the edge of the chisel brush and just dip that in the white paint. And go ahead and just give myself a little signature right here. Just let you know that this is my artwork. Just like that. And you guys, it's just that simple. Hopefully you guys thought that this was an easy one, inspired by our summer activities that hopefully some of us are going and being able to do. Going out to a nice campfire in the forest. Just that easy. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a side-by-side comparison. Alright, so this was our example photo. And this is the painting we did tonight. Okay, they both look different. I think this one's actually a little bit brighter. I really like how this shows a little bit more of the orange. But again, I enjoyed painting both of those, and I hope you guys did too. Right now, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask right on my chat feature. And if you can, in my YouTube channel, you're going to find an About Me page, and there's going to be a Facebook. And if you could click on that Facebook and go ahead and post any of those pictures onto my Facebook page, I would love to comment and see what you guys have made. Thought this was a nice, easy one for you regular painters. Hopefully you guys had a great time and you enjoyed it. And like I said, we do this Tuesdays and Thursday nights at 7 p.m. So if you are a beginner, you can come and join us on Tuesday nights. And if you're more familiar with painting, I would suggest coming and joining us on Thursday nights for paintings like these. There's some really fun ones coming up. If you guys want to subscribe, just email rrpaintnights@gmail.com and I will put you on our email blast and keep you updated with what's upcoming. Or you guys can go ahead and subscribe to this channel and you guys will be notified anytime a new video comes out. Alright you guys, well I hope you have a great